Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 83 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we need to go through the long process of configuring the circuit network to work with each one of these ore sorting lines. Enjoy! So let's take a blueprint here. Let's see, we'll probably have to pick and choose what parts of this we want, so let's just pick all of this. And we'll go through here and only put in the important bits. So we don't need that. Or any of this right here. That looks pretty close. So now we should be able to just copy this a couple times down. You see how it just barely fits. But it does. So this will be for copper. It looks like there's some unnecessary power poles and whatnot in here. Something like that, so probably should pull all of these out. At least a couple of them. But before we click too many, I'm going to change this so I don't forget what it was set to. It looks like it was copper, lead, and tin. So there's copper. That one was lead. And this one's tin. Probably should remove the ore sorters from all of this, just because those have already been set up properly, so we don't want to overwrite them, but something like this. Of course, out of resources, out of bots. But that's the general gist of it. Looks like the factory's done pretty well at catching itself up. So time for some more research. I wonder how we're doing on the very slow production of accumulators. 1.1 thousand. We're getting pretty close. We only need 2.8 thousand left to have the balanced setup with all of our solar panels. Okay, that's all placed. Now we need to configure and connect all of this stuff. Now first, let's go through and set all of these splitters. Luckily, they're all the same type here, so it's just easy to like going up through there for the copper. And the lead. And the tin. And we can connect them all together as well. So we need to get all of these combinators set up, so just change everything that's iron into whatever we want it to be. Probably should turn all of these signal generators on to make sure that they're operating correctly. So you've got our 30,000 of copper, 30,000 of iron. We need to set up this light. And we've got to set up the alarm as well. And copper warehouse is above 90%. Okay. And turn it on. Are we generating our lead signal? We are. Set this to lead. Looking good. And now tin. And turn it on. Generating our tin signal. And the light. And we got to get the speaker. Okay. So we've got our signals, but now we need to connect all these signals together so they're on one signal network so we can connect them via these power poles here. Now, we have all of our generated signals on the network, and they're all being sent to all of the associated combinators, which will receive all available ore signals, which is how it's supposed to work. So we need to set each one. Copper is very similar to iron. So we can just say if copper is less than 22,000, turn on. And since it's actually above 22,000, these are turned off, which is what we would expect. Lead has less ways of being produced, so this number is going to be a lot lower. So if lead is less than 8,000, turn on, because we essentially have 4 different ways of producing lead. And it's not running because we have, allegedly, 30,000. Tin has more ways of being produced. 6 ways. So this needs to be set to 12,000 for tin. And then there we go. That is for iron, copper, lead, and tin. And we'll worry about filling all this part out later. It's just a copy of this, so there's nothing complicated there. So let's change this blueprint a little bit to not include this catalyst anymore because we don't need them. And not include the ore sorting machines. And actually, looks like we don't need those inserters either. So it should still line up correctly here. We just have to figure out where it is. And there we go. Okay, let's remove all of these poles. So our next method of production is the crushed cupric mixture and crushed ferrous mixture. But we're here for the manganese, and in fact this is our only method of producing manganese. I wonder how many ways of producing it there are. A lot of that is mad clowns. In fact, it looks like the ferrous powder is probably the only way to actually produce this. So this one will be fairly straightforward. It lines up right there. Although this one won't work because we actually have some byproducts with this, so we can't use this one. Gonna have to use something closer to the original. Okay, well, but there's still extra stuff on here, like we're not producing any slag. So we don't need this part of the setup, pulling the slag off. And let's line this up here. We're out of some resources, but that's alright. We can set it up as far as we can. So let's set this up for manganese. Alright, we're generating our manganese signal. Connect that with everything else. Looking pretty good. Now some of these combinators are probably not required, because we only have 2 outputs here to control instead of potentially up to 4. So because we only have 2 outputs, we only need to have 2 of these on each side. Got to get all these wires running across properly. So red wire up there. And green wire up there. Okay, it seems pretty good. Okay, so we want to control the right side, which is the green here. It also so happens to be ferrous mixture, which is also green. Now what's interesting about manganese is that it's technically a byproduct. We're not actually manually creating it for anything. We're just getting it as a result of doing this mixture sorting, which is in one of the more ideal ways of producing anything in our factory. So we're going to have a lot of manganese to go through. But we're not actually going to be creating manganese. So we actually only need one thing here, because we're going to be producing iron, and iron is the thing we want to control. Although, we do actually want to have a proper stop signal. So let's put that in there. So where is this on the priority table for making iron? Well, it's actually very high. It's our second most ideal way of making iron, which I believe would be method 10 or 20,000. So we want that set point to be. So iron has to be less than 20,000. And we have our stop points. And those stop points are always going to be the same at 80,000. So it's 80,000 iron. Send a stop signal. And if it's 80,000 manganese, send a stop signal. Because although manganese is a byproduct, and we'll be consuming it as we produce it, well, if we have an overload of manganese, we definitely don't want to keep making more manganese, so we need to shut this down if that ever happens. And then we have this other side, which is producing copper and tin. But in the case of cupric mixtures, doing it through crushing is slightly less desirable than through powder, because powder gives us a silver, which is useful. So for copper, this will be method number 9, or 18,000. And for tin, it's one of the best ways of making tin through crushed cupric, which is method number 5, or 10,000. Yeah, and each resource, based on how many methods you have to produce, the potential set point is going to be higher. So it's just because tin here is set to 10,000 doesn't mean that this is a middle of the road method of producing tin. It's actually our second most desirable way. It's easy enough just to sort everything based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then multiply it by something like 2,000, and then that gives you the number you need to put in here without going nuts with it. Don't need to make it more complicated than it has to be. So with the cupric mixture sorting, it will turn on if we have less than 18,000 of copper or less than 10,000 of tin. And it'll shut off for the same numbers. 80 if we have more than 80,000 of copper, more than 80,000 of tin, then shut it down. And with our ferrous, if we have less than 20,000 iron, turn it on. And that's the only thing that turns it on or off. Then if we have more than 80,000 iron, which I guess that wouldn't be necessary since it's only being turned on through this one method. So I guess we don't even need that either. So you can kind of replace that. So if we're overloaded on manganese, turn off. Otherwise, if we have less than 20,000 iron, turn on. But none of these are turned on because we have more than 30,000, which is higher than our highest set point, so they're all going to stay off like this. So we need to configure all of these belts here, where the thing we're trying to bypass is manganese. So we want to have this set to manganese ore. And this side isn't producing manganese at all, so we don't need to have a bypass, where it can go straight up and through. And this manganese can go right into the warehouse. And since we're not producing manganese in any other method, we don't need to have these pull-offs right here. However, we still need to send all of the byproducts onto the bus, so we still need to have all of this stuff going. But since we're not pulling anything off, we don't need to have any kind of priority on any of these splitters. We'll just have it mixed into the bus. And we can kind of make it look a little cleaner by getting rid of some of these empty spaces. That should be pretty good. It looks like it'll work. Unfortunately, since each one of these is a little different, we're only going to find out if they work or not once the whole factory is fired up, but seems good enough for now. So we can hook that up. And now the next method is with crushed rubite to create nickel. And then we also have this crushed sapphire in here just as stuff to get thrown onto the bus. But now we're going to be producing slag. So we're probably going to need most of this setup in full effect. Let's get this lined up. First we need to generate our signal for nickel. And there we go, generating it. Let's hook it up to the other signals, so they're all up there. And let's set the alarms. Looking good. So now we need to set up the logic. Well, we have an output of 2 items each, so we need 2 start signals and 2 stop signals for each side, so we can get rid of some of these. And get them wired up properly. So rubite is on the right, and we have lead and nickel. For lead, this is the second most efficient way of producing it, which is method number 3, or 6,000. And then for nickel, this is the most efficient method, or method number 4, or 8,000. Then we need the stop signals for lead and nickel, and that's configured. And then we need to do crushed sapphirite. So we have iron, which is method number 8, or 16,000. Then for copper, it's method number 4, or 8,000. So if iron is more than 80, stop, and if copper is more than 80, stop. And that should be pretty good. So we are going to have slag on both sides, so we need to pull it off. But we don't have any slag coming from down the way, so we don't need to have any of these. And actually, we don't really need the warehouse either yet, because we just have the one belt of output. So the bypass ore is going to be nickel, which we need right here. But there's no bypass for the other side, because there's no nickel being produced from that side. So we can just have it go straight through. So the nickel comes up. And goes in. Just the one belt. And the rest of it gets distributed along the line here. But we are going to be producing nickel from other methods, so we need to set this up to pull off the nickel and pull it in. And we need to connect all of these. It's looking pretty good. So the next thing here is bobmonium, because we wanted to get silicon. And this setup is going to be pretty much identical to this right here. So let's make a new blueprint to take advantage of that. And we'll just have to fix it as necessary. So there's lots of stuff that's not necessary here. I think that should do it. See what it looks like. Yeah, it looks like it's the correct things. So we need to drop this in right here. Okay, let's get this set up. So we have tin and silicon. So first is tin here, which is the method number 4. So we need 8,000 for tin. And then silicon, which is also method number 4. And then the stop signals for tin and silicon. And let's do the crushed jivalite here, which is method number 7 for iron. So 14,000. And for copper, it's method number 3, or 6,000. Then iron, copper are already set up. So that's looking pretty good. There's going to be slag, so we need to pull it off. Looks like the storehouse goes right here. And then we need a loader on each side, because we've got to connect it to the other side here. Actually, it looks like we're probably going to want this one to be up there. So then there's our 2 belts of output and 2 belts of input. But we need to have this set to 1 stack, because I don't actually want to collect any slag in there. Okay. So silicon is the bypass. And it's what we're pulling off of the bus as well. Let's connect it here and configure for silicon. So there's our generated silicon signal. And that should be pretty good. Just gotta connect it. Keep going down the line. You can see this is quite the business of belts. So next we are doing sapphirite and chrotinium. But neither of these are being produced for a specific resource, because we're already capturing copper iron and copper iron elsewhere. So we don't need to have any logic like this or any kind of bypasses, so it's going to be a much simpler setup. So let's plop that in there. Okay, let's modify this. Since there's no storage, we actually don't need any of these items here. It might as well leave the power pole so it can transmit the signals along. So we don't need any of this pulling off the bus. And as a result, these can just be regular splitters. Can probably clean this up a little bit. Put these undergrounds right there. Okay, that seems pretty good. Well, we don't need to have that splitter there, so not bypassing anything. That's looking pretty good. We do need to have the warehouse in here for the slag. We got to get that hooked up properly. So 2 belts go in through there, 1 belt goes in through there, which means that we now have an output of our 3 belts, which is what we had planned for. Let's hook these up. And we got to configure them. So for crushed stereotype, we're producing copper, which is method number 8, or 16,000. And we're also producing some iron, which is method number 4, and that's already set up properly. So we got to set up the stop signals for copper and for iron. And now let's get crotinium, which is basically the same thing. It's just the numbers are a little different. It's method number 7 for copper, so 14,000. And it's method number 3 for iron, so 6,000. So next we're doing powder of the cupric powder and the ferrous powder. We've got these inserters here to mark that perhaps these inserters aren't enough, but that's not really relevant right now for setting up the logic here. That this is set up because we want to produce silver as our output. So let's just place the setup and then move everything around as required. Alright, let's get the signal set up. And this is going to be for silver. And turn it on. Now we have silver on the network. And I don't know if this is ever going to happen, but might as well put silver in for the high-level alarm. You never know. There we go. Probably should put a light right there, since there's a light everywhere else. Alright, so we're producing 3 outputs on each side. One of them is manganese, and we're not going to be producing that. That's just a byproduct, so we'll want to get rid of it, but we'll still want the stop signal. It looks like we need a few more combinators. Looks like the bus is running a little slow. How are we doing for resources? Oh, we're doing fine. It's just every single machine is basically running at full power. That's as good as you can expect, really. Okay, let's configure this for the powders. Well, the powders don't produce any slag, so that makes life a little easier. Let's see, the only source of silver is on this side, so we can set this to pull silver off, but then we don't need this. And that can go straight to the bus. And here's the slag from down the line, just moving even further down the line. We are producing silver using other methods, so we need to set all these to silver. And also connect them. So as far as cupric powder sorting is concerned, this is the second best way of making copper, or method number 10, or 20,000. Then tin, and it's the third best way, and it's method number 3, so 6,000. And finally silver. It's the best way, way number 3, or 6,000. And then we need the stop signals for copper, tin, and silver. Now, as far as the ferrous powder is concerned, for iron, this is method number 9, or 18,000. And we're not going to worry about manganese because that's a byproduct. So then nickel, this is method number 3, or 6,000. And then we need the stop signals for all 3 outputs. So iron, manganese, and nickel. And we are configured. Next we have bobmodium. So we can get zinc. And I think we're at the point now where we need to use the full setup. And everything that goes with it, because we need to use all of these mechanisms. It took a while making it down the bus, but we finally gotten to that point. Okay, let's get the zinc logic set up. Set it to 30,000. Flip it on. And we've got our zinc signal. Let's get all these belts connected. Finally, I don't think there'll be any changes necessary, that this will actually belt in and work without any problems. So we want to pull the slag off and have that go in through the side here. And we have our output, which is fine. But we want to do a zinc bypass. And there won't be any zinc on this side. So we can get rid of that. Looks like still some small changes necessary to this, but it's pretty close. And there are other methods of making zinc. So we need to configure these to pull zinc off. And configure all 8 of these on each side. So bobmodium makes tin. Method number 2, or 4,000. Then silicon. Method number 3, 6,000. Silver. Method number 1, or 2,000. And finally, zinc. Method number 2, 4,000. And let's get the stop signals set up for tin. Silicon. Silver. And zinc. Now we need to do sapphirite. It's method number 5. 10,000. Copper. Method number 2. 4,000. Silicon. Method number 1. 2,000. And nickel. Method number 1. 2,000. And then stop signals for iron, copper, silicon, and nickel. And then that's set up. Only 2 more left to go. The next one we need to do is givelite chunks to get aluminum. So let's drop this in again. Okay, let's get the aluminum signal in here. And set it to 30,000. And there we go. There's all 10 of our ore signals all set up. So set that to aluminum. Get rid of this bypass on this side. Set all of these to aluminum. Get everything hooked up. So iron from givelite chunks is method number 6, or 12,000. Copper from givelite chunks, 2,000. Aluminum from givelite chunks is 6,000. And zinc is 2,000. And then the associated limits, all in place. So let's do stereotype, which is copper, iron, silver, tin. Copper from stereotype chunks. It's method number 6, or 12,000. Iron is method number 2, 4,000. Silver, method number 2, 4,000. Tin, method number 1, 2,000. And then the limits are all in place. And that should be it for those two. And now we're down to our last one. Just these leftover Crotinium and Rubite. And no new materials are being produced here, so we just need to send it down on the bus. There's going to be no storage, so we don't need any of this. But we do want to continue the signal along. And actually, this is the very beginning of the setup, so a lot of this isn't necessary anymore. So we can kind of configure this just to place things on the bus without any fuss here. So nothing will come before it. And kind of get rid of some of that stuff. Get rid of these undergrounds here. And something like this. Now obviously at the beginning of the bus here we don't need 8 belts worth of product for these 2 sets of machines, but just for symmetry reasons I'll just have 8 here. Looks like this is lined up a little differently than I thought it was. Oh, something like that ought to work. And we gotta hook up the slag. And then this right here is our slag output. It will go somewhere else. But for now, we can just kind of leave it there. And let's get all this logic set up. Copper from Crotinium. It's method number 5, 10,000. Iron from Crotinium is method number 1, 2,000. Lead from Crotinium is method number 1, 2,000. And aluminum from Crotinium is method number 2, 4,000. And the stop signals. So finally, Rubite. Lead from Rubite chunks is method number 2, 4,000. Nickel from Rubite, method number 2, 4,000. Aluminum from Rubite, method number 1, 2,000. Silicon from Rubite, method number 2, 4,000. And the stops. And there we go. Whew, took a while. But, as you can see, there's a lot of logic that goes into all of this. But, hopefully for what it is, it's actually fairly compact. Fingers crossed anyway. Well, the next thing we need to do is just fill out the rest of these lines here by copying and pasting some of these patterns. So let's copy all this stuff. And copy this one. Or sorting facility in the way. What's down there? What's it in the way of? Oh, there's a power line there. Probably should just use this then. So plop. And plop. And plop. Probably should pull the crawler over here to handle this, since this is so much stuff. But it can also help the robots by just doing the easy stuff, which are just these straight belts with no undergrounds or anything in them. So we set these up for copper. And lead. And tin. Alright, let's build something similar. Right here, except we can modify the pattern. And just get rid of the middle belt and the middle inserters because there's going to be no catalyst. And we just copy this a few times. I believe it's at this point where we don't copy it because the quantity of the ore sorting facilities is a little different right there. Now that we know the alignment, we don't need to have this long belt running right here. We can recoup those resources to assist the building. Looks like we didn't need these undergrounds in here either. So that'll make this a little easier to set up. Looks like we're definitely waiting on steel. We are producing it as quickly as we can. It's only so fast we can do it. Okay, let's get all these machines configured. So the crushed ferrous and crushed cupric, sapphirite, ammonium, givelite, stereotype, crotinium. Okay, we had one that was limited in scope here. Well, let's just build it by hand and see what we need. So it looks like we need a stack inserter going in and a stack inserter going out. But because there's only going to be 5 of them, let's do fast inserters. And have one of them be regular and one be near. That way we can evenly load up the belt. I think that's pretty good. And they're all identical. So we can just copy them however many times we need, which in total is 5. So 3, 4, 5. And it looks like we're short of machines. So I'm just going to, fortunately, have to wait on all this steel to be produced so we can finish this up, and then we can get back to it. While we're waiting for those resources to be produced, there are some small factory improvements we can do, but that's going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.